Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshudam Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanshcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Rindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Turubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So, welcome to our continued study of this most amazing Bhagavad Gita. Feels like each week we read and we can appreciate the exquisite presentation of Krishna and how he is so compassionately and mercifully leading us to the perfection of life with just incredible instructions. So this section is yet another amazing set of instructions that are so practical and so simple and clear, and hopefully we can make them very easy to follow. That last part's a little bit more challenging. So we've been speaking about the yoga ladder, and we are talking so much about the importance of knowledge. And the question continues, to work or to renounce? And Krishna is telling us working will purify us. Working in devotion and renunciation are the two paths to the same goal. They're really one path because they lead to the same goal. But working in devotion is safer, it's easier, and it's more practical. And thus Krishna says it is the best. Because when we work in devotion, detached from the fruits, one purifies of the material desires, and being free of those material desires, there's less chance for one to fall back to the dangerous ways. So controlling in the mind and the senses is very difficult by detachment from matter. But by attaching it to Krishna, one automatically brings the mind and senses into full control. So real renunciation is not just renunciation of work, it's renunciation of the desires for sense enjoyment. So the best and most practical way is to attach to Krishna, and by attachment one naturally detaches. It is the two-in-one process, because it's very difficult to detach otherwise. So that's what we discussed last week. And now in these verses 16 through 29, we see that in the last couple verses, Krishna has been explaining who is the doer. So in 15, he said, I am not the doer. Because when we understand who is the doer, then this detachment becomes very easy. You know, when we realize we aren't the proprietor, then how we can claim fruits? Actually, we're not detaching from anything that's actually ours. I'm simply detaching something that's not mine. Is that such a grand accomplishment? No, it's so simple. But without knowledge of that, I think it's mine, then one attaches, and thus the difficulty, the suffering, and the misery ensues. So this is, again, we spoke so much in chapter 4 about how knowledge shapes our actions. So here we see again more about the result of this knowledge. Right? So in verse 16, Krishna says, when, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So we know, when is fear most prominent? At night. You walk the same park in the daytime, it's a source of great bliss, peace, comfort, calming disposition. And then in that same park, you go at night, in the dead of night, and what is your mood? Fear, concern, have no idea what's going to happen. So darkness creates a dangerous position. So here we see perfect knowledge is like the sun revealing or removing darkness. So what is perfect knowledge? It is knowledge of the soul, Krishna, and the relationship. And the only result of having acquired perfect knowledge is we surrender to Krishna. That is the result. When you have perfect knowledge, you surrender to Krishna. Prabhupada says that in the purport, perfect knowledge is achieved when one surrenders unto Krishna. So this is what happens. When we remove our ignorance, that I am the proprietor, I am the doer, I am independent, when we remove that ignorance, then it leads one to serve Krishna. It is only in ignorance alone that we try to exist in this body separate from Krishna. So we are running around in darkness. The material world is full of darkness. And Prabhupada speaks about in the purport that just knowledge of matter and soul is only partially complete. We need to go to complete knowledge. And that includes understanding who is Krishna. Because then I have clarity of what I'm to do. So we see many types of knowledge out there, just like there are many types of light. There's a flashlight, there's a light bulb, different types of light, right? And so there's different types of knowledge, and knowledge is compared to light. Right? Because when a light is on, we know darkness is removed. Similarly, knowledge, when it is present, ignorance is removed. So our concept of we are this body, concept we are God, this concept, eat, drink, be merry, sense enjoyment is the perfection of life. All of this is in ignorance. It seems like a fact, but it's all in ignorance. So how to remove it? Just as you remove darkness with light, you remove ignorance with knowledge. So what is the ultimate light? The sun. The great flashlight in the midst of the sun has no meaning. Knowledge. So then what is the ultimate knowledge? Knowledge about how to acquire $1 billion, how to find a vaccine for a dangerous disease. All that knowledge is seemingly important. Like a flashlight in the dead of night might have some value. But that knowledge in the presence of perfect knowledge of who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship, has no value. Just as a flashlight in the midst of the sun has no real value. So it's all relative. But the absolute knowledge, it is perfect. When one knows Krishna, we know everything there is to know. Nothing else. Just like when the sunlight is present, there is no need for any other light. Does anybody turn on any other lights in the presence of the sun? No, there's no need. So like that, this knowledge is perfect. So Krishna uses this very wonderful analogy that as the sun lights up everything in the daytime, this knowledge clarifies everything. There's nothing else to search. It's so perfect and so simple, but complete. So lots of knowledge out there, but perfect and complete knowledge. Who is Krishna? Who am I? What is my relationship? That's it. So this is the important understanding. And directly tied to this section, the knowledge that Krishna we're understanding is that who am I, the jiva, in relation to Krishna and this material nature? There's these three levels or three aspects of who are doing. We'll ultimately see the 5 constituents of action in chapter 18. But there are these three dynamics, and that's what's been explained here in the last several verses. We as a jiva are expressing our desire. Material nature is is carrying out those activities, but Krishna is the sanctioner, based on his impartiality. So when we know this, we stop trying to enjoy the material world and simply serve. So this is the aspect of important knowledge. So now we'll see how this leads one to the path of liberation. In 17, when one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So what is required to be on the path of liberation? One must be cleansed, purified. Purified of what? This false ego, this envy of Krishna, this lust full of material desires. One must be purified of those. And so how does knowledge lead to cleansing? Well, knowledge leads one, knowledge of knowing who am I and who is Krishna, part serves the whole, it leads one to devotional service, bhakti. In devotional service, cleanses the heart. All the past sins are removed. Aham sarvam papebhyo. Right? So, all of the sins removed. The dust of the heart is clean. Sarvo paribim nirmiktam tatpravetnam nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti uchite. That the senses become purified. So we have, so much evidence. So how to cleanse? Knowledge leads to bhakti, bhakti leads to cleansing. And that makes one eligible for the path of liberation. So Krishna is saying that one becomes fully cleansed through this knowledge and thus proceeds straight. And what is the meaning of proceeding straight on the path of liberation? What is the shortest distance between 2 points? A straight line. As soon as I start to zigzag, I am adding distance between me and the desired location. So Krishna says straight line. What does he mean straight? Well, one are fixed in the Supreme. So when I'm fixed in my goal, I want to go from point A to point B, I don't zigzag. I know where the goal is. I am committed to achieving that goal, and I'm going to walk straight to it. And thus, I'll have the shortest journey. So when that comes was when there's faith. So when Krishna says, when one's intelligence, mind, and faith are in this Supreme, then one heads straight on the path. So when we know Krishna, everything else is irrelevant. Everything else is inferior. We always want the best option. So the only issue is, do I know what's best? As soon as I have understood, I have faith that this is the best, then I go. Just as if I have 2 paths in a forest to get out, and I know one path is perfect and easy and direct, and I know the other one is not. If I know that, I'll stay only on one path and I'll be fixed on it. But if I don't know, I'll start to meander between paths. Maybe go forward, have some doubts, come back, go on this path, try that. No, maybe this is right. And like this. And what happens? It takes me longer and maybe I'll never reach there. So what leads to one to be fixed is the faith in this knowledge. I am not the doer. Krishna is my Supreme Lord. I am his part and parcel. So this knowledge leads to this sincerity and endeavor. And we'll speak more about that in the coming verses. So this intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge all fixed in the Supreme. How many of us would like to be fixed? Have this strong faith. So now, Krishna in the next verses is going to describe the symptoms of one who is fixed. So if we see the flow, that we started with a detached worker is the best process. Then Krishna spoke about how one views the activities in the body. I am like a living in the city of 9 gates. I am aloof. The material body is doing so many things, but it's not me. I have detached consciousness. And the result of that is no sinful reaction, and one attains peace. Then Krishna explained, we are not the doer, nor is he responsible. So this was much of what we discussed last week, that kind of the sequence. And then the result of the knowledge that comes from working in a detached manner is one moves towards liberation. And now we'll see the wonderful symptoms of that person. So this is the kind of flow that's happening here in chapter 5 so far. From detached worker to understanding I am aloof from this body, because I am not this body, to the understanding that there is no reactions and one attains great peace, to understanding the doer, and now the path of liberation and the symptoms. So now 18, we'll start with the symptoms of liberation. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. Outcast. So, what are the symptoms of one who is fixed on Krishna or the super soul? They see the super soul and jiva in all living entities. So again, Prabhupada talks about real knowledge must include knowledge about the super soul, not just the soul, but must understand the super soul. So the sages see everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. He sees that the super soul has taken residence in all types of bodies and doesn't judge one based on the type of body they have. He knows that type of body is simply due to their past actions that has been awarded by material nature under the sanction of Krishna. So he sees that the fact that the jiva and Paramatma are together equally present in all living entities, the sage would be the humble and well-wisher of all. Knows the body is just different due to the past actions. I think Borijan Prabhu gives this example. I don't remember exactly, but I like to use this one a lot. What is the difference between me and the spider? The only difference between me and the spider is the spider has misused its independence a little bit more than I have. That's it. Spider has a body based on the degree of its misuse of independence. But spirit soul is there and Paramatma is there. So by virtue of this knowledge, one becomes very kind and has equal vision to all. And this verse speaks about great humility one reaches when they have full knowledge. Because one doesn't think, oh, I am better than somebody else. No, it sees even that the ant in the street is part and parcel of Krishna, let alone our neighbor. We have the story of the Brahman and the scorpion. The scorpion is walking towards the water, and the scorpion cannot swim, so it'll drown. So the Brahmana picks up that scorpion and is trying to move it to shore, but it stings it, so it shakes its hand and it falls down. And again, the scorpion begins to walk toward the water. And the Brahmana picks up the scorpion the second time. And it stings it again, and it throws it on the ground again in reaction. The third time, same thing. Finally, one gentleman asked, "Why are you doing this? He is stinging you every time." And the Brahmana replies, "It is the nature of the scorpion to bite, but it is my nature to be compassionate. So I'm acting in my nature, and the scorpion is acting in its nature." And so what is the conflict? That is what happens when we have knowledge. And it is a real virtue, a true virtue. But this humility that is born of this knowledge is very powerful. You know, the Uttamadhikari, they see everybody equal. They actually see everybody higher than them. So they can't even preach because they don't know who to bestow their knowledge upon. Because this person is more superior to me. They're so humble that they see themselves most fallen. So actually the Uttamadhikari comes down to the Madhyamadhikari platform to be able to preach. Why? Because of this very humble disposition. But sometimes what happens is the more we acquire knowledge, the more proud we become. And that is a sign that we have not understood this knowledge. Actually, the more knowledge we acquire, the more humble we should become. As I often say, it's easy to be humble in the beginning. We don't know anything. But once we know something, actually we should become more humble. When we realize we're a tiny, infinitesimal spark of the most amazing Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this knowledge should actually lead to even greater humility. And that's what we see by the humble sages. So Krishna's word here, the humble sage, leads to this real virtue of equal vision. Okay. So now we're going to see the flow of verses 19, 20, and 21. I've put a little diagram off to the right to help us connect these. So what is the sign of a self-realized person? Krishna says, those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the condition of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and they are already situated in Brahman. So what is the sign of a self-realized person? One who has equanimity. If one knows that he is spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna, an eternal servant, then he knows all other living entities also have the same situation. He knows how each got into their respective position and thus doesn't discriminate. Even to someone who comes and slaps them. Equanimity. That is just due to their conditioning. They are also spirit, soul, and Paramatma is residing there. Better I not punch this person. And he has equanimity to his own situation. He understands all that is happening is according to the will of Krishna. And it is all good. More on that in the next verse. So this sameness and equanimity means that they're already liberated from the condition of birth and death. Krishna says, have conquered the conditions of birth and death. That is the meaning of liberation. Because once you're self-realized, we don't identify with the body and focus only on serving Krishna. And thus we have transcended matter. Liberation means to go beyond matter. Right? Conditioned soul means as long as I identify with the body. Liberated means when I stop identifying with the body. It is not a geographic destination. It is a state of consciousness. Once I stop identifying from the body, I'm in a liberated state. And that's Krishna is saying it. So this sameness and equanimity is an indication of a self-realized person. Prabhupada says in the first line of the purport, equanimity of mind, as mentioned above, is the sign of self-realization. As soon as I'm self-realized, I am spirit soul, I'm not this body, then I don't judge according to the body. I judge according to the soul. And everyone has the same spirit soul as part and parcel of Krishna. Right? So this sameness and equanimity is born out of self-realization. As soon as we are realized, this happens automatically. Don't identify the body, only focus on Krishna, live within this body in the city of 9 gates. You know, just like a lotus leaf, untouched by water. We have seen so many examples in this past verses in the part of this chapter. That is that equanimity. So it's very hard to do this, very hard to see. We draw so many judgments based on different types of people, based on different skin colors, different socioeconomic dynamics, different animals, different plants. We draw so many judgments. But this is the perfection. This is the symptom of one who is fixed in this knowledge on the path of liberation. And we see, importantly, that this can happen even while in this body. Right? So, we see that this happens before giving up the presence. So, this is already possible. Okay. So now, 20. Continue. What are these symptoms of this self-realized person? Verse 20. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. So, the result of equanimity and seeing sameness is this: neither rejoicing nor lamenting. So, this is what the result. This is the symptom of the pure devotee. There is no rejoicing or lamenting. This relates directly to this equanimity from the prior verse. And it means that the equanimity, this sameness, this no rejoicing or lamenting, it means the ups and downs in the material world does not create ups and downs of one's consciousness. They're simply living in this body of 9 gates. Nothing in the material world consumes one's emotional energy. But it does not mean one becomes stone-like with no emotional energy. Instead, all of the emotional energy is fully consumed in enjoying service to Krishna. So there is no ups and downs based on the situation in the material world, because one is focused on the transcendent, on a higher platform. And when one is in bhakti, there is no down. It is absolute. Everything is perfect. So thus there is no rejoicing or lamenting is referring specifically to the activities of the body. But there is great rejoicing in the service to Krishna. And so how one sees no ups and downs, because they see the super soul sanctioning all activities. And Krishna's ability to sanction is perfect. And so they know Krishna's plan is always perfect. Everything that happens to the devotee, in the eyes of the devotee, is perfect. Maybe not for my material situation, but certainly for my spiritual situation. And my focus, if I am in the path of devotion, is only about caring for my spiritual situation. So even when things we want don't happen, one feels great joy. Oh, Krishna saved me because he had a better plan. His plan is perfect. Because if I'm trying to serve Krishna, and Krishna is all loving, and he knows my desire, then certainly he'll arrange everything to fulfill that desire. He's always fulfilling the desire, not only of his devotees, but even of the non-devotees. So when one has faith in that, then whatever happens, it is to be understood that this is perfect. Everything I get is actually helpful for my bhakti. Why lament? Even this coronavirus. We must see, how is this being beneficial for me? In the midst of so much difficulty. Krishna's plan is perfect. If someone treats me poorly, some difficulty comes. No rejoicing, no lamenting. Just see it as a step forward in devotional service. It is such a wonderful disposition to have. It is so liberating. No more stress or anxiety. Just bliss in devotional service. Such a powerful state of consciousness to achieve. And it's achieved when we have this knowledge. And so here now we'll see the result. When we have this sameness and equanimity, where there is no rejoicing or lamenting for the material conditions, what is the result? Krishna tells us, such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense and pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. What is the goal of every living entity in the whole of creation? Unlimited happiness. And here it is, this equanimity. So, the result of seeing all alike and being unmoved by the material affairs of the body, no material desires, that result is unlimited, unparalleled happiness and bliss. When we stop looking for material happiness, all happiness comes to us. It is all attraction to matter that is eliminated when we experience the bliss of bhakti. This higher taste leads to detachment from all matter. And Prabhupada gives the very, vivid description of Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya had great desires for sensual pleasures. But when it came to Krishna consciousness, the bliss, the taste of Krishna consciousness was so extraordinary, so high, that he says, I spit at the thought of sex pleasure. Prabhupada writes in the purport that the whole world is moving for this pleasure. The highest pleasure in terms of matter, Prabhupada says, is this sex pleasure. But the taste of that is so low compared to that of bhakti. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that once one eats some sweets, some laddus, then he has no inclination to eat mud. Obviously, who would eat mud if you have a rasgulla with you? Nobody. So like that, who would try to enjoy matter if you have the bliss of Krishna consciousness? So Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport that the level of the sex desire is a test of our spiritual realization. Again, the test of our advancement is how much we are detached from matter. Back to chapter 2. What was the characteristic of the Stitya Prajna? Fully free of material sense enjoyment. So someone in Krishna consciousness has no material sense desires because they are so deeply fixed, in devotional service, and experiencing so much happiness from it that they forget everything else, just as one eating a rasgulla or gulab jamun forgets easily the taste of mud. Okay? Now we get to another formula. We're doing some math today. Get out your calculators. 22. how to control these urges. These next verses will tell us. An intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery, which are due to contact with material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. So now Krishna is explaining, he has to explain the symptoms of that great personality, and says, now he's going to clearly explain why sense desire is foolish, the next two verses. So, a wise person avoids matter, Krishna says. Why? Because matter leads to misery. That's a fact. Someone who is wise is one who avoids misery. If someone knowingly walks into a bad situation over and over and over again, will anyone call that person wise? I go into this place and I am punched in the nose. So I go in again and I'm punched in the nose. The third time I go, I am punched in the nose. Will anyone call that person wise? They'll say, why you are going? Stop going. It's foolish. Well, this is the material world. We keep trying to enjoy our senses, and we keep being slapped in the face. Over and over and over again. Like a donkey looking for sex pleasure is kicked in the face. Srila Prabhupada will always say, this donkey-like pleasure. This is the material world. And why are all the material pleasures miserable? Because they're temporary. Krishna says, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. As soon as it's temporary, there will be misery. Because if I have that pleasure, I know it will end. And thus there will be anxiety. And if I don't have it, I am lamenting for it. So either way, whether I have it or not, it is miserable. Stressed that I'll lose it, or lamenting that I don't have it. It's unsettled position. And as soon as we are unsettled, there is misery. So this laboring hard to enjoy the senses is very foolish. There is more pleasure, more happiness available from within. The human life is not meant to work so hard and try to enjoy matter. Rather, it is meant to sacrifice, to advance in knowledge, and learn to enjoy from within. So an aspiring devotee, they must be fixed in this principle. Sense gratification equals misery. If one is convinced of this fact and experienced the higher taste of bhakti, then one becomes free from all matter. Convinced of these two facts. I'll repeat that again in this verse, 23. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the forces of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. So Krishna is saying, you can be happy in this world. Before giving up this present body, one can be happy. How? If one controls the senses and don't allow them to interact with matter that will lead to misery, and instead engage them in bhakti. Then one can be happy even in this world. As soon as one interacts with matter, misery is there. Sense objects lead to attachment, which leads to lust, which leads to anger, delusion, bewilderment, loss of intelligence, fall down. We saw this sequence earlier. Again, it is the same. So one must control the senses to make progress. Prabhupada, references a verse from Nectar of Instruction. Vacho vegam, manasakroda vegam, jiva vegam, udaropashto vegam. These 6 vegams, these 6 urges, we must control. And so what is the best way to control these urges? Engage them in bhakti. We talked about the positive engagement of all these urges. The urge to speak, the urges of the mind, the urges of anger, the urges of the tongue, the belly, and the genital. We said how to engage them in bhakti, not trying to stop speaking, stop the mind. No, but to simply engage them. And Krishna says before giving up this body. It's important. It means that up until death, one must tolerate these urges. Maya will tempt us up to the very last moment. Don't think, I have arrived now, I can let my guard down. Up to the last moment, would be tempted. We see so many examples of this. One of the most vivid is the story of Kala Krishna Das, who was serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally in his tour of southern India. Personal association with the Supreme Lord, who is by his action showing us the process of devotional service. What more mercy we could have. And yet in that state was tempted by the gypsy tribe. And at night, one evening, while they were traveling through the forest, left the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he went to go enjoy with them. How that can happen? Maya. The influence of Maya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, knowing this happened, being Paramatma, bestowed great mercy on Kala Krishnas. He went to that tribe and extracted him by pulling him by his hair and pulled him out and said, "What are you doing? Come on." But this is the potential. So we must control these urges at all times. So how, again? If we have the taste of bhakti and conviction that matter leads to misery, then the result is complete control of these urges. So the higher taste of bhakti plus the conviction that sense enjoyment will lead to misery, that results in complete control. And this is all facilitated by devotional service. So this formula will help us avoid this miserable condition. So now, where does happiness come from? If not from matter, what do we enjoy from? Krishna says, one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. So this happiness isn't from external matter, it is from within. What does it mean practically, happiness within? Sitting on the banks of the river, meditating on the beautiful pastimes of Krishna, singing beautiful bhajans, chanting the holy names of the Lord, reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam. All this is what yields utmost pleasure. No need to labor hard to acquire big houses and big cars and more money and fame. No, happiness is from within, from one's service. Again, no one's going to step away from matter unless there is pleasure in spirit. So if one finds his happiness within on the spiritual platform, then it becomes so easy to give up these material engagements because the bliss is so far superior. It's very easy to give up a $10 bill if someone hands me a $100 bill. We don't even think twice. It's very easy to give up eating mud when you have rasgullas. Whatever example we want, it's so clear. So the result of this happiness, when we get our happiness from our connection to Krishna, which can be experienced within, the beauty of it is we become in control. If it rains, one can be happy. If it's sunny out, one is happy. If someone yells at us, one can remain happy. If one glorifies us, one can remain happy. If you lose all your wealth, one remains happy. If you gain the wealth of the world, one remains happy. If it's Monday or Saturday, one remains happy. Why? Because the happiness has nothing to do with these external designations. The happiness has to do with the higher platform of my relationship with Krishna. And that is not dependent on sun or rain, wealth or poverty. And that is the wonderful position, that one can be undisturbed in the bliss, no longer subjected When I go on vacation, my happiness is dependent on so many external factors. Is it raining while I'm on the beach? Is the child next to me screaming and yelling and disturbing my sleep? Is the waves of the ocean bringing too much, tumultuous situation I can't enjoy? So many things to try to enjoy. But simply sitting on the banks of the river and reading Srimad Bhagavatam is all within our hands. And this is the power, the potency of happiness within. It is not only extraordinary, it is always within our grasp, and it can never be taken away from us. So, one must experience this higher taste, and then it happens. And then controlling the senses becomes so easy. Simple. Okay? So now the final set of verses. What activities does a self-realized person do? Those who abound. So the self-realized person is happiness within. Does this mean they sit idle? No. Krishna is going to answer that. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. So they are very busy working. Doing what? The welfare activity of all. What is the greatest welfare activity one can do? Reviving one's Krishna consciousness. The materialists will claim that the spiritualists are, a burden on society, doing nothing productive. But the reality is that the full cause of all difficulties is one's forgetfulness of the relationship with Krishna. As soon as you solve that, all difficulties go away. You may try to feed somebody, but then they'll become sick. You may be trying to give somebody help, but then they'll become poor. You may try to give somebody some money, but then they'll become full of fear. But all of these things are solved when you awaken one's understanding of who they are, who is Krishna, and the relationship. This is the greatest welfare activity. Conventional welfare is focused on the bodily platform, which gives some temporary relief. Certainly better than nothing, but it gives no permanent solution. Forgetfulness of Krishna is the real cause of our suffering. And so the greatest welfare is to help those become aware again of their relationship with Krishna. And thus, how much they work? They're busy working, not lazily, but very active. So now all of this may seem very difficult. Wow, how I'll ever find this sameness and equanimity, no lamenting and no rejoicing. How I'll be able to have this, happiness within. To be busy working for others. How this will happen? Seems impossible, huh? Well, Krishna is going to assure us now. He says in the 26th verse, those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. What a wonderful statement Krishna is making. He is saying that we are assured this position. How long we have to wait? In the very near future. It can happen quickly. Don't worry. Don't be discouraged. Why? Because Krishna is here. He is sitting in our heart as a super soul Paramatma. Krishna takes great effort to maintain his devotees and to help. So we have faith that yes, on our own we can't do this, but Krishna can make it happen. And Prabhupada quotes the verse from actually I don't have the reference for the verse, but he presents the verse in a purport about the fish, the tortoise, and the bird. He says, by vision, by meditation, and by touch, only do the fish, the tortoise, and the bird maintain their offspring. Similarly, do I also, O Padmaja. So Krishna is maintaining us, just as the fish, the tortoise, and the bird maintain their offspring. Krishna is maintaining us. We are his children. And so, this bhakti is so superior because it becomes easy to control the senses when you have experienced a higher taste. These other yoga processes, they struggle to control the senses because the material allurements are so strong unless one has acquired a taste that is even stronger. This is so deeply rooted, this conditioned nature. But bhakti makes it very easy to do. Then you get Krishna's help and mercy. He is going to maintain us. He will guide us, care for us, and clear the path. And something so great like being equipoised, having equanimity, happiness within, it's all achieved by devotional service. Even the great sages don't get these benefits. But it is available to one who practices devotional service. So Srila Baladev Yudhibhushan comments that the key part of this verse is constantly endeavoring for perfection. That is the key part. That for one who is sincere in endeavor, perfection is readily available. Because the super soul who is attentive to all, who acts sincerely, Krishna knows. Krishna's mercy will come by the level of our sincerity. Krishna will make it happen if we really want it to happen. How sincere is our endeavor? As soon as we endeavor, Krishna will make it happen. Yeah, we can't make these types of situations happen. But our sincere endeavor will inspire Krishna to say, yes, my child is now very eager for this. I'll make it happen. But if we have very loose, it'd be nice, I don't know, maybe, then we won't yet attract this ultimate mercy. So how to get it? Constant endeavor, sincere endeavor. Okay? So now the final three verses. Krishna has concluded his discussion now of how one achieves liberation through knowledge and meditation on the super soul within. We saw the symptoms and the activities of such person. And now he's going to give a preview to chapter 6 by speaking about another way one can achieve this position. Ultimately, Arjuna is going to say this process is the other process, the alternative that Krishna will explain here, is impractical. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between two eyebrows, surrendering the inward and outward breaths with nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. So here Krishna is describing the Ashtanga Yoga process that he's going to describe in detail in chapter 6. So it is another way to achieve the liberated state. But ultimately we'll see that it is not practical, as Arjuna will say, and this will then set up Krishna to begin speaking about bhakti in chapter 7. So this is how we're leading. So Krishna will conclude now with this very famous peace formula verse. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material existence. So Krishna is summarizing now that this verse brings us from the understanding of Supersoul to know Krishna. So he's elevated now to Bhagavan realization. Okay? And because he's getting ready to speak about bhakti in chapter 7. Bhakti means knowing Krishna. So far when we're speaking about within, we're technically speaking about the Supersoul as the sanctioner. But now Krishna has established the ultimate peace, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary. So Krishna is the beneficiary of all human activities. Everything we do is meant for his pleasure, not our own. And knowing this leads us then to serve Krishna, the source of all. And then one can find peace, because we know where to sacrifice. Right now, I think I need to sacrifice for my own sense pleasure, but it's not working. But knowing Krishna is Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam, he is the ultimate beneficiary. Oh, now I know. Then one will find happiness. All their sacrifices, karma kanda, karma yoga, all these other sacrifices, ultimately meant to lead to Krishna's enjoyment. And when we serve Krishna for his enjoyment, then we enjoy it. So we must know that first aspect. Second thing, Krishna is the source of everything. How does this lead to peace? Because I'm no longer wondering, is there something beyond? Is there something more? Is there someone else? No, I can have faith. Serving Krishna, he is the ultimate and absolute truth. So knowing him to be the Lord of all, we no longer search out. We see so many people looking, this God, that God. Who is the ultimate? So knowing this leads to peace. But of the three aspects of peace, this is the greatest. That Krishna is our greatest well-wisher. What can be more peaceful than knowing that the most powerful, most loving, Supreme Lord is our greatest protector? Srila Prabhupada comments in a lecture on this verse, saying that he is a friend, not like a social friend. He is a friend like a loving father, always there for us, no matter what we do. Wherever we go, he accompanies us. No hesitation. This is the ultimate friend. He sends his servant, the spiritual masters, to guide us. He comes himself as incarnations to instruct us. He shows us the path of devotional service as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, over and over and over again. He is showing this greatest friendship to us. When we know we have the Supreme Lord as our well-wisher, what more could give us peace? So knowing these three things, he is the ultimate beneficiary of all activities. We no longer have to wonder what I'm supposed to do. He is the source of everything. We have to no longer wonder who is the supreme truth. And finally, he is our best well-wisher. No longer we have to worry who will protect us. We know these three things, then one can attain peace from the pangs of material existence. So this is chapter 5. The sequence again, working attached leads to difficulty. So one then begins detached work. When we get some knowledge of who is the doer, it leads to more knowledge. That increased knowledge leads us to understand the soul. And then we understand the super soul as the sanctioner of all activities. And from there, we find out more about Krishna, which leads to devotional service and ultimate happiness, being liberated and free from the material modes of nature. So this is the chapter, the last chapter of this, the last paragraph of this purport. Srila Prabhupada makes some nice points that this chapter shows us how one is liberated by detached working, which results in knowledge, and thus one achieves great bliss in seeing equal and sameness in all material things, and thus remains fixed in bhakti, which is full of bliss. So this is chapter 5, action in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute. So next week we'll begin discussing chapter 6. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki. Any comments, questions, discussion, clarifications, corrections?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
I'm sorry, did you want to go first?
No, go ahead, Prabhu. Go ahead, Mike, Prabhu.
First of all, thank you again for such a wonderful lecture and guiding us through this amazing, blissful material. My question, I guess, is more kind of discussive, but
Yeah.
I feel as the world turns for the worse and greed and exploitiveness become more prevalent everywhere and unavoidable anywhere, the selfishness of the asuras in this world, I feel more detached from it as a place that I do not want to be engaged in madness. And in saying that, in one way it's a boon to be detached. But how can we be detached from this madness but remain compassionately engaged? How can we kind of rectify being detached and being compassionate?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question because when one detaches from the madness of the material world, it should inspire compassion. So it should inspire that, wait a minute, I have realized that this world is just, the activities of material sense pleasures are just so frustrating, and there's something so much better out there. Wow, how come my neighbor doesn't know that? How come my friends don't know this? How come my society doesn't know this? What can I do to help them? And that is why Krishna said that they engage in the greatest welfare activities. They are busy because the devotee is not interested in resolving their own difficulties. They are interested in serving Krishna. And what is the greatest service to Krishna? Saving all of his children in some whatever small way they can. So one becomes detached from the material world by no longer finding their pleasure from it, but one, circumambulates the material world trying to save others. And what does Srila Prabhupada do? He could have stayed in Sri Vrindavan Dham, being fully immersed in devotional service, but he circled the world 14 times. Why? To save all of us. He was already saved. Why he went through such difficulty? He put himself in the most hellish of conditions, living in New York City by himself. Could you imagine walking through 2 feet of snow with India-made shoes and a dhoti and barely a coat that could keep you warm? And why he was walking? Because the place he was staying had no shower. He was staying on the floor of an office building. Not even an apartment. He was staying in an office building. And he had to walk blocks up the street just to take a bath. He had to beg somebody. He knew them. But to take shower. Why he endured that? Because he was compassionate about the suffering of all of us, lost, mired in this material allurements. So the devotee, when they have this knowledge, it inspires them to try to save others, giving up all their own personal comforts, giving up all their own needs. Why? Knowing that is most pleasing to their worshipful Lord. So when we understand this, yes, it should create this distaste and this disdain, convicts that this material world is full of misery, and then we try to help others, achieve the same realization we have. And that is, the goal of this course, the goal of this study, is that all of you, all of us will go out and take this knowledge to others. Why we're systematically studying it? So we have the strength and ability to explain it to others. That is the goal, the only goal. So, thank you for that question. It was really an observation.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, and
Hare Krishna.
your restored expression, Prabhu, very nice. I I actually enjoyed your class. Very nice indeed. I got this couple of questions for you. The one thing is you said that Uttamadhikari to come to Madhyamadhikari stage to preach. This is a similar thing what from because of the compassion, so it's coming down and preaching. So when we do when like a Madhyamadhikari or a very initial devotee, if we start preaching to people who actually not really ready to accept that Krishna is supreme, okay, and they are not ready to accept this is the real process for the Kali Yuga, which is actually established process. So in this case, sometimes we may go to speak the partial truth, not really coming to the point. That okay, Krishna is the supreme, so this is how the process should be. So not exactly like a right on the face, but we can speak some partial truth. So can you please touch up at that point? Is it okay how it should be?
Yeah, so the question is, if one is not ready to hear the full absolute truth, is it okay to speak the partial truth?
Yeah.
So this is a very important question, and also very delicate, because one must be very careful, and this is why we follow the example of our acharyas in how they did it, because you can take that partial truth to start to dilute the message, and that becomes very dangerous. We start to out of fear, or maybe not full faith in the potency of the holy names, we don't speak about Krishna. Yet hearing Krishna, even if one has an animosity in their heart in hearing, has such a purifying effect. So, Prabhupada presented everything as it is. They told him, the other people who had come from the east to New York, they said, Prabhupada, if you want to connect with these people, you have to give up your dhoti kurta and put jackets on and pants. You have to eat with a fork and knife, not with your fingers. And Prabhupada said, no, I'm going to present it as it is. Because as it is what will deliver. I am not looking for followers. I am looking to help those become uplifted from their material condition. So, presenting partial truth can be dangerous because it dilutes the message. And sometimes we worry about I don't want to scare them off by talking about all this. Well, sometimes the truth hurts, but it needs to be heard. Now that's one side. Now let me give the other side. The other side is a skillful preacher understands how much one can take at that point, how much they can digest. Srila Prabhupada, very famously, when he gave his first initiations, he put a sign on the door. Here are the 4 regulative principles. They didn't even know the 4 regulative principles as they were about to take initiation. So Prabhupada was giving in dosages that were digestible. So we have to be careful not to overwhelm somebody with all of the knowledge that will not sit well. That's why one of the offenses is to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And when you get this question, does that mean I can't tell someone who has no faith to chant? No. You get them to chant, but you may not reveal the deep inner meanings of that until their faith builds. So, in preaching, we learn how much they can take without compromising the truth. And that is a fine line. But don't cross the line. Is Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Well, it's up to what you think, because we don't want to shut them. No, he is the absolute Supreme Personality of Godhead. But you may continue, you can continue worshipping other devatas, but just add a little bit of Krishna add the Mahamantra. You continue chanting these mantras that you are attached to, but start chanting the Mahamantra. So we're not acknowledging or acquiescing to their belief, but we're not saying you stop doing all that, you chant the holy names and nothing else. Right? So, and this is why it is so important. These, and unfortunately, you see, some deviations in the preaching. This happened even during the time of Srila Prabhupada. And thankfully, he was there to correct. When sometimes they were, distributing books on some false pretenses. And he was saying, let's not do that. Or, there were different, ideas. We should grow beards and hippie hair so we can relate with the people. And then distribute books. They would wear wigs. Some different ideas, all other good intent, right? The intent was good. But we need guidance so that we don't cross that line of diluting the message, but we don't overserve them where we, make it difficult for them to digest.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Next, one more thing is from the last 529. So he said, all sacrifice satisfy Krishna. Either the statement is correct, or the next statement is all sacrifice to be done in satisfaction of Krishna.
They're both correct. So when I do a yajna for any devata, Krishna is Yagneshwar. So the devata does not keep that sacrifice. They offer to Vishnu. And then Vishnu provides the means for that devata to reciprocate with the living entity. So the sacrifice is ultimately going to Krishna. So that's why Krishna will say in the 7th chapter, those who worship the demigods are worshiping me indirectly. So he is the factual recipient of all yajnas. So when we think we are, offering a yajna, the demigod is the wholesaler. They're the intermediary. Ultimately, it must go to the proprietor. And there's only one proprietor, Krishna. And then the second aspect is, or should all of our sacrifices be to Krishna? Yes. Now knowing that, whether I directly or indirectly, it's all going to Krishna, why not go to Krishna? Okay? So yes, all of our sacrifices should go to Krishna. But if we do other sacrifices, they are also ultimate, because he is the only enjoyer of all yajna. Okay?
And how do Krishna receive this sacrifice? Like, I'm just trying to understand from my ability that, like, when we offer to demigods or when we offer to directly to Krishna, how do Krishna receive it? Means in which form, which communication process we receive that?
All through transparent spiritual mediums. So in mind, Krishna accepts our love, right? He accepts all of our offerings through the spiritual medium. We offer to deity. He is eating the offerings through the spiritual medium. So when we offer our sacrifices, the devatas will then in turn offer. They don't physically have to go to Vaikuntha Loka and offer them, but they pass them on. Just like when we, receive something nice, one offers it to their guru. This is by the mercy of guru. If something pleasant happens, someone is appreciating something, that is all offered to the guru. Right? So like that, that's how these sacrifices to the devatas are offered to Vishnu. Because in the example is just given, you have the CEO of a company, and then you have the CFO, CMO, COO, all these different agents. But that potency, the whatever, the CFO can move millions of dollars and have big financial transactions. But their only ability to do that is because they are assigned to that role by the owner. So their ability to give is not their own independent. It is due to the empowerment from the owner. So the any devata, they have no independent ability to bestow any boon. Because Krishna is the only proprietor.
Yes, Prabhu, and sorry to stress this question, Prabhu. One more small point I just wanted to clarify myself. So is this like, we have, I understand this method of demigods and then it's going to the supreme, sacrifice. But Krishna is there in our heart as a Paramatma. So when we sacrifice, so even to the demigods, to the him, so do the Paramatma who just get that benefit at that point, or
Paramatma doesn't get any benefit from us. He is complete.
He is the means he is the sacrifice, means he is the final. That's why I'm asking.
He's the observer of our yagyas. He is the witness to everything we are doing.
Okay, so when we say Uttaran Yajna Tapasya, the Paramatma is not the one who is getting satisfaction by the offering.
No, now Krishna is saying me. Right? He says, a person in full consciousness of me. What is full consciousness of me? Bhagavan realization. Paramatma is still partial realization. Because where Paramatma comes from? It is a reflective expansion of Shirodakshaya Vishnu. Where Shirodakshaya Vishnu comes from. And then all the way up to Krishna. So that's why Krishna says, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary. Not Paramatma.
Okay,
Make sense?
thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Nice.
Hare Krishna. Anything else?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you can announce what the Sorry, I just had a quick question.
Yes.
Absolute truth, that term, I've never been clear on what it means. Is it the same as perfect knowledge, or is it knowing that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead?
So
what does it mean?
Yeah, so what absolute truth means is, I can say that it's warm outside today. Well, that's a truth, but it's a relative truth. It's warm relative to yesterday. But tomorrow, it's going to be warmer. So when I say it's warm outside, that's a relative truth. Because it's not true in all circumstances. It's relative to the particular condition. Absolute truth means it is true in all circumstances. So it is absolute. It is not conditioned or dependent on any other factor. And so the only absolute truth is Krishna. Because he has no dependence on any kind of material circumstance. So Krishna is the absolute truth. When we say he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is not conditioned on, well, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this era, in this yuga, in this universe, in this condition, in this state. No, he is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So everything about Krishna, every aspect, every feature, every truth about him is absolute. Right? Just like I may say that I am, tall. That's not an absolute truth. That's relative. But I may say Krishna is beautiful. Well, he is the absolute beauty. It's not relative to something else. So that is the meaning of absolute truth. It's a little subtle, but that's how we understand it. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, then Bhaktivedanta Prabhuji, organization related. Prabhuji, one question. Like in our homework that you have given, there are two questions. There the first and second.
like how can you be happy in a material world which is full of misery, and the other one is what is happiness from within. So aren't it the same kind of answer that we have? Because only happiness from within, and when you are happy from within is only when you're going to be happy actually in the material world, because the consciousness needs to be raised. So something different.
Yeah, so the second question is more to describe practically what does it mean to say happiness from within? What is the activities that generates that happiness within? The first question is a little bit more on a gross matter of happiness is achieved within this world when one learns to abstain from material sense enjoyment and engage in the higher taste of Krishna consciousness. Right? And some other additional you can add, but happiness within is the result of that, and that happiness within is experienced by one's devotional service, one's connection to Krishna, as we gave the examples of, sitting and reading Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the holy names of the Lord. So how one experiences that happiness within. Because otherwise it becomes a theoretical, because you go to yoga classes, they talk about, find peace within. What does that mean? Be present in the moment. What does that mean? Right? It becomes a little bit philosophical versus practical. So we want to decipher that to practical realizations.
Yeah, because there is a danger in that happiness from within.
Yes.
Kind of an outward person may even think it's like more like an impersonal feeling.
Yes. If you notice in these purports, what is Prabhupada talking about repeatedly in these purports? He's talking about Krishna being the Supreme Lord and making sure one doesn't come to an impersonal view because of exactly your point. One might think Brahman, one is situated in Brahman, Brahma Jyotir, right? So to protect against that, Srila Prabhupada is writing a lot about Mayavadi philosophy in these last 10, 12 verses. We didn't discuss them today because it's, the point is a little bit different, but that's why, to make sure one doesn't come to that type of conclusion.
I had another question about that when you discuss about equanimity and sameness. Can you differentiate between that part?
They're not really differentiated. They're sort of two terms of a very similar, or we can say the same kind of concept. And the equanimity has two sort of views. One is externally, so one views everything around them equally, and one views their situation, whatever happens to that person, equally. So their own experience is equal, and their vision of everyone around them is equal. But equanimity and sameness, as I understand it, I've not heard a real distinction between the two.
Okay, but when you said that sameness and equanimity is a sign of a self-realized person, so basically we're talking about the vision part of it, and then again we're talking about, but I'm not able to understand, there are two different words there, so
The two different words describing the same thing, right? So they're two adjectives, just for the similar purpose, is what here. So we can say happiness and bliss. What's the difference? Well, they're two descriptions of that experience. So equanimity or sameness, it just simply means that one is unmoved by the different circumstances in the material world. Right? So whether one is rich or poor, they are equal in happiness. Whether one has lots of followers or none, they're equal in happiness. When one sees a dog, an ant, a cow eater, and a brahmana, they are equal in their vision. They see them all as spirit soul. Right? So, or they see them as the same. So you can replace the word equanimity with sameness and get the similar meaning. Sometimes we need different words that register with us to help us understand the point, right? So sometimes we say bliss, sometimes we say happiness. To each person, sometimes bliss means nothing to somebody, but happiness does, and vice versa. So it's a matter of speaking to help it reach a broad audience.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Okay, anything else to that?
Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, we.
So I just wanted to give me yes or no answer. When Martin asked this question like happiness within the real discussion, this is like meditation. I just realized that this art of living. So what is your suggestion about the art of living? That is kind of just a meditation process or something is good to know about or think about it.
I'm not sure I'm following the question. Can you maybe?
Is it art of living process is good or kind of not so?
You're talking about like Ravi Shankar's.
The meditation from art of living. So what they say is Sudarshana Yoga, Turiya, all those things.
Yeah. So Krishna is going to explain this meditation process in chapter 6. He's going to speak about how to do it. If you want to do it, how to do it. There's an Ashtanga Yoga 8-part process. And it's very detailed, and he's going to give a very elaborate discussion about it. And then Arjuna is going to say, this is impossible. It's easier for me to capture the wind within my hand than it is to try to control the mind, as you are explaining, Krishna. It's impossible. And Krishna is going to agree. And he's going to say, Yoginam api sarvesha madgate nantaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktato mata. Yeah. Of all the yogis, the bhakta with faith, Shraddha, is most intimately united with me. Oh good, now let me speak to you about bhakti. And from chapter 7 to 12, he's going to speak about bhakti. So, it's a process, but it's a very difficult process. We can say impossible. Because the controlling of the mind through meditation is very difficult. The controlling of the mind through devotional service is quite straightforward and simple. So now we pick. Are we going to pick the impossible, difficult process, or are we going to pick the simple, easy process? It's up to us. Krishna is going to lay out all the options. He's going to tell us clearly which is best. He's going to say, Manmana baba mabhakto majini mam namaskuru. Arjuna, you do these 4 things. You become my devotee. You think of me. You offer your homages to me. You offer your obeisance to me. And then he's going to say, why I'm telling you this? Pati jane priyosime. You're my friend. I'm telling you. Sarva dharma parityaja. Give up all other aspects of religion. Mamekam shanamba. Just surrender unto me. So he's telling us. You give up all these other ideas. Yeah, they have a place. But because you're my friend, I'm telling you, this is the best for you. And then Krishna says, have you understood everything? Is there anything you want me to repeat? No? Okay. Now you do what you want to do. It's up to you.
Yes, now I'm more clear about that. If they practice also, it just becomes a temporary satisfaction. It's not going to do that.
It's not bhakti.
Yeah.
It's not bhakti.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Actually, Prabhuji, I have one more question if that's okay.
Yes. Yes.
I've been always wanting to ask this question, slightly confusing to me. Now, the people who do this Ashtanga yoga process and all that stuff, and they finally realize Paramatma, they have that Paramatma realization. So then, and then on the next stage, I think they told that all this they are doing is so much cumbersome process, so difficult and all that, and finally they come to the process where as yoga is beginning. So is that correct in my understanding what I have heard in that lecture? Or maybe I'm incorrect. And another thing is like Ashtanga yoga and all these things they are doing, then they are achieving liberation without realization of Bhagwan. So I thought that we have to have a complete Bhagwan realization also. So
Yeah.
because that's why I'm not very clear. How come these people are getting that Brahman realization and getting that liberation? So
No. Yeah.
yeah, clear on that. Clear to me.
The Brahman realization is not a permanent liberation. So one can reach the Brahma Jyotir, but one can fall from that position because there's no activity, and thus one becomes, anxious, and thus one can fall back. So the Ashtanga yogi who has Paramatma realization now must continue forward from there to Bhagavan realization. They continue on that ladder, right? If you're on the fourth rung and there's a fifth, you must go to the fifth to get to the top. So those processes must continue to get to the ultimate objective. But the problem is, you might get distracted along the way. You might not make it. You might not finish the Ashtanga yoga process. It's very difficult, as Arjuna is going to say. But once I see Paramatma, I have felt the presence of Paramatma from within. We say Paramatma is in my heart, but have we seen him? Have we felt him? No. So the completion of Ashtanga yoga is that I have experienced Paramatma. Now, well, who is Paramatma? The reflective expansion of Shirdakshay Vishnu. Who's Shirdakshay Vishnu? And ultimately that'll bring me to Krishna. So all the paths ultimately bring one to bhakti. Or we just start in bhakti. So all other bona fide paths will bring one to this point where we are starting from. And Krishna is saying, you don't have to go the step by step. You can start right in bhakti. That is the recommended path. Because he makes it very easy. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. Just offer me your love and devotion. You don't need to be some highly sense-controlled person. As Rupa Goswami explains, you can even start when you have bhukti, desires for material enjoyment. Even then you can still start devotional service. It's not pure yet, but you can start. And one doesn't have to become free of material desires to start bhakti. And that is the ultimate mercy of Krishna. So all these other paths, they culminate in the practice of bhakti, including this Ashtanga yoga process that we'll discuss over the next 2 weeks. Okay?
Wonderful. Yes, probably very nice. So foolish actually to go through that path, I think. I mean, when we know that this is actually the start of that other process. So this is the yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Guru. Thank you.
And we want to have the same conviction. And when our conviction is that this sense enjoyment is so foolish that it becomes so easy to avoid. Is it difficult to avoid eating arsenic? No, it's not so difficult. Somebody brings you a beautiful golden bowl full of arsenic. Is it difficult to detach from that? No, because you're convinced it will kill you. You have full faith that it's bad for you. Yet, it's difficult to abstain from so many material pleasures just because we're not convinced that it'll lead to misery. Krishna has said it'll lead to misery. He's going to say it in the 8th chapter. From the highest planet to the lowest, full of misery. As soon as we become convinced of that, detachment from material allurements is so easy. But how to become detached? When we've attached to something so much sweeter, spiritual life. So, even the other paths, they become easy to detach. We think it's so simple, foolish, when we know that there's something so much better out there. And that's why perfect knowledge is so critical to shaping our activities. If I don't know, I do the best of what I know. So this knowledge is critical. This whole Bhagavad Gita is teaching us, is giving us knowledge to shape our activities, to know what to do and what not to do. Because the decision is always ours. Okay, anything else today?
It's more than a class, these are the life lessons for our future. Like it has so much more than just the class.
Well, a class or hearing is meant to shape activities. If not, it's just entertainment. It's just pious entertainment. It's better than impious entertainment, but it's just pious entertainment. Hearing about Krishna is meant to transform the heart, to change the consciousness and activities to achieve a better outcome. So when we hear, that should at least be our goal, what I can practically do. So that is and that's what Srila Prabhupada did. He spoke, and instantly people's consciousness was changed because he was so potent. So when we speak from Prabhupada's purports, it can happen. Because he has the potency. So much potency. Thank you very much for all of your participation and allowing all of us to experience the bliss of Krishna's instructions. They're so sweet and presented so clearly. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishya Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna once.